The role of video in the candidate experience, next on the RecTech podcast.
Welcome to RecTech, the podcast where recruiting and technology intersect. Each month, you'll hear from vendors shaping the recruiting world, along with recruiters who'll tell you how they use technology to hire talent. Now, here's your host, the mad scientist of online recruiting, Chris Russell.
That's right. It is time for RecTech, the only podcast that helps employers and recruiters connect with more candidates through technology-inspired conversations. If you listen, you'll hear both recruiters and HR tech vendors talk about how they use tech to find talent. But first, this episode of RecTech is sponsored by Job Fairing, the job fair search engine. Is your company hosting a hiring event or job fair soon? Well, Job Fairing will help you promote that event to a local audience in your city. Submitting your event is free, but they'll also help you advertise it on channels like Facebook if you choose to feature it on the site. It pays to advertise, so to ensure your hiring event is well attended, head over to jobfairing.com and get it listed. Now, on to our guest. Ben Eubanks is the principal analyst for Lighthouse Research and Advisory, a human capital management firm that recently conducted a study on video in the candidate experience. Hey, Ben, welcome to RecTech.
Hey, thanks, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just chat briefly. Did you go to HR Tech this year? I was curious what your thoughts were.
Oh, you know it. The whirlwind, I tell everybody that it's the World Series of our world, right? We get to do this for the Olympics, I guess, of our world. We go through all these grueling things. It was a lot of fun, always. A lot of hype, as usual. It's funny that I see so many firsts and bests and onlys that it really numbs you pretty quickly. Get one quick walk through the expo floor. But really, after my first couple exposures to it, I've started seeing it as a place. I don't know about you, but to really gather and curate some good social connections and then just build those relationships later. That's what I found is most valuable about that. Not so much trying to get in the technology because it's tough there and there's so much spend on the hype and, again, the campaigns, everything else that you sometimes get lost in. What does this actually do? So anyway, that's a quick snapshot of my experience at HR Tech.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like the best networking event of the year, basically. That's how I see it. Just to go out and reconnect with the people I know and find those new connections as well. So that's the reason I go mainly.
Absolutely. Well, despite both of us saying that, I don't think we actually saw each other this year, did we?
No, I don't think so. That's the other problem. It's too big of a show as well sometimes, So I kind of like the smaller shows, the one-day events, things like that. But it's 9,000 something people there. You can't see everybody. You used to be a practitioner, right? So how long have you been an analyst now?
So I stepped into the analyst field back in 2014, so a couple years, and I've actually run my own analyst firm since middle of 2016.
Okay. So what's a typical day like for an HCM analyst? What do you do?
It's funny. I spend my time doing things that I really like. I write a lot. Pretty much every day I'm doing some kind of writing. I run a research project, usually once a month on average, and that covers everything under the HCM spectrum, not just TA, but workforce, global HR, all that kind of fun stuff. And then I read and I listen to a lot of content as much as I can, podcasts like this one, really trying to consume as much as I can around HR business leadership because I want to understand the bigger picture beyond just our space sometimes because it's really easy to get so focused on this little granular piece of the world that you sometimes lose perspective. So that's what I spend most of my time on when I'm in the office anyway. I'm out speaking regularly. And again, the practitioner thing is something I wear as a badge of pride because when I go, I'm usually not speaking with other analysts because not to stereotype all of my brethren, but they're usually seen as, hey, we're going to drop this stream of research on you and then leave and you can decipher it. And I'd really try to get more towards hey, as a practitioner, here's the things I would have used. I need something actionable, practical, some takeaways, things like that. And so that's the way I usually kind of approach that stuff. So that's the way I run my research in general, and it's been well received.
So your latest piece of research really caught my eye recently. You did a study about video in the candidate experience, and when I first saw that, I thought it would make a great topic for the podcast. I'm really into sort of, companies and using video better for recruiting, which they're not doing. So tell us about the study and how did it come about?
Well, I'm going to take one step back actually before I talk about that one because this kind of validated something that I did earlier this year, and I was really interested to see how much they tied together because sometimes you just don't know what to expect. The one I did earlier this year was around video interviewing and assessments in the candidate experience, trying to understand how those things tied together. Oh. And the findings there were interesting because I found that video was a huge preference for candidates. And again, I don't know about you, but I hear anecdotally all the time, candidates don't like assessments, candidates don't like video interviews. You're dragging down the process, you're making it unpleasant for them. And in reality, they said, hey, we actually like those things only if there's a line of sight that helps us to see how this is going to make us more appealing for the job, or helps us to feel like we're more suitable for the job by giving us those things. So that's the way I looked at video back then. I said, okay, now I want to take it more broadly in the hiring process, not just interviewing, but more broadly, and look at how are we communicating with candidates. And so I actually, in this research, surveyed two different populations, one a group of recruiting leaders and one a group of candidates, to look at those two different populations and figure out what's going on there, what sort of things did they see, what are they thinking. And the fun of the research is, for me, for doing these kinds of studies, is getting those two different populations together, because you get to hear, again, both sides of the issue. Are there any gaps? Are there any opportunities to bring those two parties together? Things like that. So lots of different opportunities in the study that we found to again, bring those people together, things that the candidates and the hiring managers, or the companies might actually be thinking on the same lines. They just haven't come together and met for some reason. Well, let's bring them together.
Yeah. So I read your blog report on the study itself, and I wanted to quote you because I thought this particular quote was, I think, the most telling from it, for me anyway. And you say the study sheds light on ways companies are wasting money on video production while failing to meet the preferences for candidates. I walked away from the study with an overwhelming sense of people want to work for people, not companies. Just talk about that briefly, if you would, because that's, I think, a great insight.
Yeah. So, you weren't the only one that thought that. There was I shared the results out, and someone on this global HCM technology leader from that pinged me on Twitter and said, hey, you know what? That was one of those forehead-slapping moments for me, where I know that my candidates love interacting with a hiring manager. We just know those things, but we don't put them in front of them earlier in the process. We don't make that a priority. We don't make it something that is very common in there. And so what gets me is, when you think about jobs you've had in the past, you immediately think of the people that you work for, usually. Right. I think of a boss, I think of a coworker, a peer, I think of someone there. I don't think about that big logo that they're putting out there, and yes, that's what they're putting forth. And so that's the thing that I came away with is, we know that in, further down the line in terms of employment, hiring managers have such a huge impact on employee satisfaction, everything else. We know those things are true. Why wouldn't it be true earlier in the process that they want to hear and engage and interact with that person to the extent they can? In this case, we're only talking about that one-way interaction of being able to consume a video that person is sharing information. But even that, again, in the survey, we saw the candidates are really, really interested in that information.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I don't understand why more companies don't even tell you on the job description, okay, who does this position report to? Even if you don't have a name, but maybe a title at least. I mean, give candidates information about who they're going to be working for and with. That's just going to help you in the long run. And if you can put a video to that, I mean, wow, that's like the Holy Grail of candidates, I think, for candidates.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ben, walk us through the major findings of this report, if you could.
Sure. I'm going to break it down into two different pieces, one on the candidate side and one on the employer side. So for the candidates, the number one video that candidates want to see before applying is a hiring manager. 3/4 of candidates said that type of video would make them more likely to consider the job or more likely to apply. So that's kind of a double whammy there. And then that number actually goes up to 87% if they're actively searching for a job. They're more interested in seeing them. And then one of the things that I love to do in the research is to ask give really detailed options in the answers so that they have to spell it out. It's not to me assuming something off of a general Likert scale of, yes, satisfied or dissatisfied, but I give them really specific answers. And 55% said, I'd love to see this kind of information from a hiring manager and would trust it more than a corporate or company-produced video. So that really surprised me to see that high of a response. And I really wanted to get to that credibility, that authenticity piece of that.
And you're talking about sort of raw footage, right? Just, unscripted type of video engagement, right?
Yeah, the specific question was, I don't have it memorized, but it was, how would you feel about seeing a shot from a hiring manager, possibly from a smartphone that is, again, unscripted, just right there, them sharing with you, It's not a polished company branding video or something like that. So that gave them the chance to really specifically. There was no guesswork when they picked an answer there about how they felt, because I tried to be very specific. On the employer side, the employers actually said that when I said, what's the most persuasive source of information that you can give to these candidates, they said hiring managers. We're going to put them in front of hiring managers. We know that's the most important. That's followed by, in terms of priority, by testimonials from employees, recruiters, employer branding, and finally at the very bottom, corporate comms. So hiring managers in the study were seen by employers as 4 times as persuasive as our employer branding, which is interesting. But then you have to keep that in mind as you think that in the study, only 3% of employers said they're using any sort of hiring manager in their video. They're missing out. Even though they know those things, that's kind of a coaching opportunity. We need to find some ways to bring them up to speed because they know it's important, but they're not doing it.
Yeah. So why are they not getting that? I mean, it's, in terms of video and sort of the major employers, I mean, they're all very, legal gets involved, and they're all very protective of their brand, and they want to produce these highly produced, pieces of content, but they're totally missing the boat here, I think. I mean, are they ever going to get that, Ben? I mean, is there any hope for them to get this? Because I don't see it anyway, but what do you think?
I go back and forth. I completely agree with there's a stranglehold of we're afraid of saying something, but at the same time, there are some really great big companies that are doing this, and they're making this a priority. So Amazon, Fidelity, PayPal, Booz Allen Hamilton, they're doing these kind of things with their recruiting. And again, huge global employers, and you can imagine just as much as I. Fidelity, as a financial services firm, probably has the most strict policies about everything other than the federal government. And if they can pull it off, I'd say anybody else can at least take some strides in that direction. And I don't want to be super prescriptive, but I'd say that the pieces of information that should be shared in that sort of context, if someone's going to say, okay, I'm going to try this out, but I'm worried about that, the first 2 minutes of the interview, those things the hiring manager would share are the things that you'd share there. Hey, these are the key job duties. This is the work ethic of the team. It's not about, we need a feminine presence on our team or something where it's going to, that's the thing that everybody's scared of. That's the red flag that's going to make your legal person's head blow up. Mm-hmm. We don't want anything like that. Let's talk about the actual job, by the book, about the facts, and that way you stay safe from most of the other sorts of gray areas that give people some concern and pause. At the same time, you're giving that candidate something very specific that they can consume and potentially take action on.
I thought it was also interesting that the least favorite videos for candidates were stuff that is really being churned out by companies, which is a recruiter HR message or an employee testimonial. Talk about that a bit if you could.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, my brethren, recruiter buddies, they don't care. They see us as a facilitator between them and the hiring manager and not much else. At the same time, that gives us, some push, right? Some pull in the conversation. Say, hey, let's get these hiring managers in this, because the faster I can get something in front of this candidate, the more likely they're going to be interested, the more likely they'll potentially apply and some other things. Mm-hmm. Again, the job preview piece of that, it's not just a vague walkthrough. It's not just this general, hey, here's the office and where all of our employees work and all 600 people are here. It's very specific to the job that we're doing. So if we're talking about a job preview that someone wants to see, which is right behind the hiring managers, they want to see the actual jobs they be doing. This is the kind of person that does this work, or this is the type of workspace that we work in. And people want to understand those things because it goes back to that previous study did earlier this year. They want to be able to see themselves in that role and understand, after I've seen this thing, I feel like I'm more qualified or more aware of what I need to do this job and to do it well. And they're preparing themselves at some level for what it takes to do that job. So I think those things. No candidate comes to you thinking, man, I hope that I can skirt these requirements and just get in and then do nothing. They really want to perform. And so these tools that we're giving them, this information we're giving them, is helping them get a leg up and make them feel like they could perform if given the chance.
So you have kind of two key takeaways from this study, Ben. So I wonder if you could just explain both of those for the audience. What did you really learn from this?
If people take nothing else away from this, they really need to think about ways to get the hiring managers in front of their people, in front of their candidates. It makes a dramatic impact on their likelihood to apply and their likelihood to consider the job. And we're spending so much money on things like branding videos. Candidates want to see people. They want to see actors. They don't want to see stock photos. They want something authentic. And, I mean, that was really my aha moment in this. People want to work for people. It's so critical.
Mm-hmm.
Again, on the second piece of that, let's go over something that's less scripted, something that's less polished and overproduced, because people instantly see past that. I don't know about you, and this is super anecdotal, but when I go to buy something on Amazon, I find the item I want, and I jump down and start looking through the reviews because I want to hear from someone else that's like me, that had a problem that potentially uses to solve it. And then if it fits, I'll go back and actually read like the basics of what this product does, product description and stuff. Let's get right to those really specific things that people want to know from someone that's like them. And then if you need to, again, have something that's polished or produced or whatever else after that, it's fine. But let's get right in front of them with that content they want to see, because they're craving that, they're interested in that. That unscripted kind of stuff is really powerful in that sort of context.
You're right. They're definitely craving it. And I think that companies who start to take this kind of approach in their, recruitment marketing will be the winners in the war for talent here, I think. In terms of, recruiting as marketing, Ben, it's still we still have to drill into these employers' heads that you have to get better at, marketing yourselves overall, right? I mean, talk about that a little bit if you could, in terms of just getting that mindset in terms of pushing your jobs out there, because it's such a tight market that you have to rise above the noise, right?
One of the things that immediately occurs to me is that as employers, or even as recruiters, we should know the populations that we are recruiting. We should understand them. We should know where they hang out, what they like, what sort of things are their hot buttons. We should know all those things about them. In my time as a recruiter, that's when I had a key role to fill, I found out all that stuff first, because then I could have a genuine conversation with someone that went beyond the, hey, are you interested? Here's the job description. Let's see if you want to just click to apply, and I'll drag you into our ATS. It was very much a real personal conversation. Again, people hire people. That is, despite all the technology, the AI, all the other things that you and I saw at HR Tech and we hear about every single day. Despite all those things, while they're valuable tools, at the end of the day, there's a person involved in that. There's a person involved in that process that's going to accept or deny that candidate the ability to join that company. And so really understanding them well is the essence of marketing. It's the essence of recruiting.
Great stuff, Ben. Appreciate the time today. Tell everyone where they connect with you and Lighthouse.
Absolutely. So my Lighthouse is found at LHRA.io, Lighthouse Research and Advisor. You can do a quick Google and find us there. I'm on Twitter at Ben Eubanks. And again, I don't know if you'd plan on sharing this in the show notes or not, but I'd glad to
absolutely
share the results out with anybody that wants to check them out.
Yeah, we'll definitely put that in the show notes, and I'll tag you online when it all goes live. That's going to do it for this edition of the RecTech Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsor. And remember to check out jobfairing.com for your next hiring event. You can subscribe to this show via iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and now Stitcher Radio. Hey, if you like the show, please leave a review on your channel of choice. I'd love to see your feedback, or mention us on social media with the hashtag RecTech. Follow me on Twitter at Chris Russell, or visit rectechmedia.com, where you can find the audio links for this show on our blog. Thanks for listening.